And with that, it is my absolute pleasure, to welcome in Chris Level, Texas Tech, all things Texas Tech. I'm going to let him plug things because he's got his Red Raider octopus arms and everything. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Dan. I appreciate you having me on. So I do a lot of things with the Red Raiders. I did radio here and like sports radio in Lubbock for about 17 years. I got out of that about a year ago, but I've been doing the Texas Tech broadcast for 13, 14 years and hosting the football coaches show every week through Mike, Tommy Tuberville, Cliff Kingsbury, Matt Wells, and now Joey McGuire, and do the color work on the men's basketball broadcasts on the radio, and then do Locked On Texas Tech now. Got into the podcasting world, which is so your stuff is tremendous, and so the podcast is the way of the world these days.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and then been publisher of RedRaidersports.com, which is part of the Rivals.com network since 2002 or so, give or take. So do a lot of things.
So let's start here, though, because you mentioned all of those coaches, all of those tenures. How does the Joey McGuire thus far, after a year, compare to Matt Wells, Tommy Tuberville, of course, Mike Leach, Cliff Kingsbury, a number of different coaches, philosophies, personalities? Where is there overlap, and where is the unique quality of Joey McGuire?
I think a lot of times coaches, it's about fit. And you can have a good coach and a bad fit, and it just doesn't work. And I think when it's Mike was a perfect fit here. Chris Beard on the basketball side was a perfect fit in Lubbock, Texas. And I think Joey is a perfect fit. I think he's got some ties to this place. I think his just energy and his vibe on a daily basis. And I think people are like, does he act like this all the time? And the answer is yes. I don't know how long he can keep it up. He's basically everywhere. I mean, this is a guy that embraced this place from the time that he stepped foot on campus, and he's at the softball game, he's at the baseball game, he's at the track meet, and it's very visible and it's very genuine. And I think people around here really, have bought into him because of who he is. And I think that's why his kids play so hard for him.
Right.
And I think that with the NIL and the portal and all the things, Tech got lucky. And again, we haven't seen the end of this story. I don't know where it's going to ultimately end up, but I just think in 1 year, you kind of hit the lottery. I mean, and there's just a lot of guys out there that people may view as a better coach, a more experienced coach, but I'm not sure if I'm looking to trade Joey McGuire to anybody right now, just because of kind of what the energy that he's created. And there's been tangible success as well.
Sure. And it's one thing to have energy. It's one thing to have enthusiasm. So take me back to when he was hired. What were the specific early moves that you felt like perhaps set him up and set the program up for early success, let's call it?
And this, I think, because of the early signing dates, and I think because of the portal being fairly new, this was a unique situation. I mean, Matt Wells was removed as head coach when they were 5-3, and right. People were like, "What is Texas Tech doing?" And Joey was hired in the midst of 2 seasons ago, and so he was able to be here and monitor this program from kind of afar while being the head coach. And Sonny Cummey was the interim head coach at the time. And that's rare. You don't see right. that a lot. And then I can even remember a bowl practice before they were about to play Mississippi State and Mike Leach, ironically enough, where you had Joey there, you had interim head coach Sonny Cummey there, and then Matt Wells was back in town seeing some of his previous staff members and was there. So you had 3 head coaches at the same practice, which was kind of a bizarre occurrence.
Sure.
But I think what he did was, and it allowed him to kind of have about 6 weeks or so of just being able to kind of watch these guys in real-time action and maybe attend a practice and see kind of what the issues are, what we can fix, what we can address, what kind of staff I need to put together. And Dan, when he was hired, I mean, I think a lot of people were excited, but there was also a lot of question marks. This hire was somewhat criticized. Like they just hired a quote unquote high school coach.
Right. A position coach with more
Yes.
experience in high school. Yeah.
Yeah, this is not somebody that was a coordinator or an acting head coach. I think there was a lot of people in Waco that felt like they were shocked that he didn't get the head job when Dave Aranda got it, and so I think he
Wow.
was kind of trending that way. And when Texas Tech, was looking to hire somebody, I think they really initially targeted Coach Traylor at UTSA. And I'll
Hmm.
tell you that Coach Traylor and Joey are very good friends, and Coach Traylor was just not going to leave that job. And I think he's like, your man, the guy you need to be talking to is in Waco right now. Like
Right
go
under your
visit with,
nose. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. And so, but I think I think his ability to sit back and kind of monitor, watch them win a bowl game, and kind of take the momentum that Sonny Cumbie created. And I have so much respect for Sonny, and I'm rooting for him at Louisiana Tech and all those things. But he created such a vibe and kind of momentum that Joey just took the baton and ran. And I think he lucked out getting Tim DeRuyter as his DC. I think there were some initial conversations about Garrett Riley and offensive coordinator and all those things. But I think ultimately it ended really good with Zach Kitley, because Zach Kitley could be working at a lot of places and probably getting paid more money. But he just surrounded himself with good people, man. And I think he squeezed about everything you could out of this group last year.
So nobody bats 1,000, obviously, in year one as not only a first-time college head coach, but a first-time college head coach on the Power 5 level in the Big 12. If you were to give Joey McGuire truth serum, what do you believe he would say? All right, these were the lumps. These were the learning curves where, I didn't have the experience and I had to learn it on the job. What would those be that he can now take and say, this is what I need to improve upon as a head coach?
I think because when Joey got here, the big thing that his identity was going to be was high school recruiting. Okay, that was going to be his big, because Texas High School Coaches Association and all those connections
Sure.
and all that stuff. But in this day and age, I think that it's not as much about getting the high school kids and developing them. And maybe, I don't know if he would say that he messed up. I was surprised they didn't go as much portal and try to stay old as they could have initially.
Right.
And so you've got a bunch of 20-year-olds, or I say that 18-year-olds that you've recruited, and you weren't, maybe there were some depth issues at some places last year where they could have maybe addressed that. But again, he was playing to his identity, and like, this is why you kind of hired me. Texas Tech recruiting has not been good in the last 10 years. This is what I'm going to be really good at. And the dynamic has changed, as we know. Now, is it his fault that, you had to play with three different quarterbacks?
Right.
And so maybe he would say to you, maybe I wouldn't have run those guys as much. Maybe we wouldn't have, because he's like, we got three of them. We're gonna they're all dual threat guys. Maybe he would rewind the tape a little bit and maybe not run them quite as much. I don't know, but I think those were, not that that's what got these kids hurt, but it's very difficult when you're trying to play a season with two different quarterbacks, much less three, and then still try to win in a league like the Big 12. But those would be a few things, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. And so you look at the quarterback issues, you look at one of the things Texas Tech did quite well is they won losable games. And you can look that as a negative thing, right? That they're in a position to lose these games to Texas or Oklahoma or whoever. And they lost a winnable game against TCU. They're up heading into the fourth quarter. How do you view it? How does the fan base view the close calls against Texas Tech, even, dealing with a defense that gave up a lot, dealing with quarterback and injury issues, dealing with a first-year coaching staff? What is the general vibe now, a few months removed from some of those closer calls?
I think and why I say fit on Joey and everything like that, like one thing he's able to do is that he's able to get his kids to play really hard for him. And there was a time, and I'm right down there on the sidelines and have been for 13, 14 years. And there was a time when Texas Tech football was just in a place where it's like, oh no, here we go again. And you could just watch the body language drop. You could watch the shoulders drop. You could go, okay, this guy's hurt. We don't have a chance now. Pat Mahomes is your quarterback, and you can't stop anybody. Okay, so I've seen it all. what I noticed last year is that you get an overtime result early on in the season, and then you get another one middle of the season, and you get another one late in the season, and these are all wins. And so I think that they never felt like they were out of a game. Kind of reminded me of Mike a little bit in that,
Sure.
you're in the game no matter what the score is, but I think the tangible result is what changed the dynamic here, because they got results. And I think those kids play really hard for him, and they never really blink. And they were outmanned at times. I mean, if I'm standing on the field looking at Ole Miss in the bowl game, and I'm like, just the eye test alone,
Right.
and I'm like, this game shouldn't be close. And yet it was the Red Raiders that kind of ran away with it at the end, because you could just tell one team locked in. And Texas and Oklahoma are the same. I mean, that's you don't look the same as those guys do. They're getting the 4 and 5 star measurable guys and all those things, but yet your kids played harder at times. And I think that's where. So you won some games. You kind of labeled some of those games, but when you beat Texas or Oklahoma here, that carries a lot more weight. And I think, you were down 20-0 at one point at NC State, and you ended up losing that game. But you look up, and that's a 1-2 score game, late into the second half, and you've got Donovan Smith in there at quarterback, and then you put Behren Morton in there at the end, and you're trying to scratch and claw and figure out what may work, and you're on the road in a primetime game at night, and they just kept grinding, kept fighting. And I think that's a tribute to Joey and what he's put together, because they just don't flinch, and that's why they won 4 in a row to finish it.
Yeah, my philosophy is quite simple. Winning is better than losing. And if you're not going to play super well and you can still win, we call it winning your clunkers here. That's a good thing. Winning is always better than losing. And sort of on that note, an interesting trend or whatever. I mean, you can look at this in a number of different ways. Texas Tech struggled to close on the road. They were successful in Lubbock. They won big games in Lubbock, but I don't think they won on the road until the Iowa State game later
Correct.
on in the season. And it's a tough defense, obviously. Was it a byproduct of just playing good teams on the road, or do you think it could be sort of a first-year lump thing of figuring out travel, figuring out schedules, figuring out which buttons to push when you're playing against good teams, decent teams on the road? Do you chalk that up to anything?
Yeah, and I go back to that Iowa State game, because that was kind of the scarlet letter up until that point. And I remember, look, it was 0 degrees this night. There's 20,000 people in the stands, because the temperature was just miserable.
Yeah.
And it's a night game, no less. I've got everything I own on, and I just remember that. But they've got guys out there with no shirts on to warm ups, and they were just like, but they knew they needed to, like, again, to get to a bowl game and to finish it the way they wanted to, you had to go figure out a way to win a road game. And, look, losing at Kansas State, there's no, nobody's going to fault you for that. They won the Big 12 championship. The Oklahoma State game, you're in there until the very end. Behren Morton was his first start, and he gets dinged up right at the end of the first half. And I think you just kind of let it get away from you, but you played really well this day. The TCU game, we were actually in a flight delay. We sat on a plane in Lubbock on a runway for, I think, 8 hours. We got on the plane at 11 a.m. and we didn't take off until 6:30 or so, maybe even later than that. And that was an early morning kick the next day. But again, TCU went on to do great things. And then you win the Iowa State game, so you didn't have that many road games. And then I mentioned the NC State game too.
Yeah.
They were, so part of this is you played really good teams, and Oklahoma State was still in the mix and playing good football
pre-collapse
at the time. Yeah, pre-collapse. That's a great way to put it. So, but yeah, he's running up and down that Iowa State sideline and just talking about, we got to finish it, guys. We got to be mentally tough enough to get a result away from home. And it's funny we're talking about this, because really one of the knocks on Texas Tech football in the last decade is you haven't been really good at home. It kind of became not as much fun to be a season ticket holder, because you just can't, you're not winning enough, period, but you're certainly not winning in front of your fans. And it's the apathy or just lack of interest kind of seeped in. And I think Joey has totally flipped that in 1 year, because now you're rewarding the home fans. They saw a win over UT. They saw a win over Oklahoma. went over Houston in dramatic fashion, if you will. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think there's a little bit that goes. You can spread that answer around a little bit on why road home, all that stuff.
You mentioned some previous offenses that, as fun as they were, the defense was as disappointing, right? You'd have to either win or lose, 60-55. And so Texas Tech has been, we like to call it like a yeah, but team. Yeah, the offense is great, but the defense needs to do something. And so the defense has taken these past couple of years a nice step forward. I think you could go as far as saying that they were at times last year an asset to this team and, on the road to winning, despite, what happened with Dylan Gabriel in the Oklahoma game near the end of last year. How close is this defense? How close? I know they hit the portal hard. They're going after edge rushers. They go to Syracuse, they go to Oregon. They obviously on the recruiting trail, the secondary and the defensive line is a focus. Tim DeRuyter has a bunch of success as a coordinator these past few years. How close is this defense from a personnel standpoint, from a scheme standpoint, whatever, to becoming that asset as Texas Tech aims to be more complete?
And I credit Matt and Keith Patterson, who is the head coach at Abilene Christian now, who's the DC under Matt at the time, because they didn't get to see the payoff, but they hit home runs in the portal prior to their departure, and you're about to see one be picked likely in the top 10 in Tyree Wilson. Yep. It's wild to me that Matt and Keith were able to get Tyree Wilson to walk on here for a semester, and then 2.5 years later, he's going to walk out of here making more money than he ever thought he'd see as a top 10 pick. And I think that your starting corners are those guys' recruits, Malik Dunlap and Rashad Williams. I think, Marquise Waters was a really, really good player for you last year. He was a portal guy that they got in here. And so I think that the mix with, what Keith was able to do and kind of get the vibe turned around, because where it really started was that bowl game versus Mississippi State. I mean, they shut down Will Rogers and company for 60 minutes. And defense became cool here again all of a sudden. And this is not, people won't realize this, but once Tyree Wilson is picked in the first round, that's 4 years. I guess in the last 4 years, you're going to have 2 first-round draft picks, and they're both going to be on the defensive side of the ball because Jordan Brooks was the other one. Yeah. I just don't think the general person knows that. And Jordan Brooks was a dude. I mean, he was phenomenal. And the Seahawks, I think, made a good selection there. I think he was one of the tackles leaders in the NFL last year when he was healthy. But I think Tim's group is really old this year, and so much of what Matt and Keith put together, Tim has taken it and ran with it. And Tim is a really good coach. And I think Joey got lucked out there getting a lot of experience there. This is a Power 5 guy that has a lot of experience at the Power 5 level, and they had done really good at Oregon. And he's Tim, for example, he's about to have 2 back-to-back top 10 picks because his guy at Oregon went, I think, 6th pick to the Giants.
Thibodeau, yep.
Yeah, Kayvon Thibodeau. So he's about to be able to tell everybody, you want to be an edge rusher? I mean, I'm cranking them out left and right.
Right, and you go back, Von Miller at Texas A&M also has the ties, yeah.
Great point. And I think they think that Steve Linton and CJ Baskerville, that are both portal guys from Syracuse and from San Diego State, these are both 6'3", 6'4", 230-pound guys. They feel like they will fit in with what Tyree did and what Marquise Waters did, and they won't miss a beat. Easier said than done. Tyree Wilson was a freak. He commanded one of the best presences about him in a locker room that I have ever seen. One, because he's an enormous individual, but 2, he's just so good and practiced as hard as he played. So I think that's a tricky intangible to try to replace. But I think they hit the portal, and I think they're really old. Most of the starters all came back. And, what you have defensively is you have an upper tier of older, experienced guys, and then you kind of go – there's not a lot of middle. And then you've got really young, these studs that Joey has tried to recruit. So, but I will look for big things from this defense this year. They won't be perfect, but they're going to be a reason why you win some games for sure.
On the other side of the ball, the Texas Tech offense was interesting. I think that's the word I'm going to use, just because of the quarterback issues health-wise, and at times struggled to pop some bigger plays. Okay. They have these promising receivers. Obviously, Roderick Thompson did a very good job, especially against some of the more stacked lines. Offense is built more around the short, quick passing game. What's the next step for this offense? We saw it, a couple years ago at Western Kentucky with Bailey Zappi succeeding, also built on the short passing game. What is the evolution of this offense to sort of keep defenses more honest?
Yeah, I think you've done your homework. It's big plays. I think they manufactured a lot of offense last year. And when you have three different quarterbacks, you're kind of tweaking what you are as an offense week to week. And there's no chemistry with receivers and play calling. You're trying to, accentuate different skill sets with these three different guys, even though they could all run and all those things. But some of them read defenses better. Some of them have stronger arms, whatever. I think that was tricky. So what was this offense? But I think Zach is more than willing to be very balanced. I think that there was a misconception here that when he got here, he wouldn't ever want to run it. This was going to be Mike or Cliff or whatever, when they just threw it all over the place. And now he absolutely wants to be balanced. And they had to churn it out, and they wanted to get QBs involved in the run game. That's just what you have to do in this league when everybody's playing cover two or that double cloud scheme that Iowa State made famous, and they give you the run game. But big play, here's you a stat that just it cannot be this way again this year. They were good on offense last year. Their offensive line wasn't great. They were serviceable. They've tried to improve that, but you were one of 8 programs in the country last year that didn't have a run for 40 yards or longer.
Wow.
Just 8. When you go to 50 yards or longer, you were just one of 20 teams. So they didn't have the big play, the speed that you're looking for to kind of stretch the defense, and they tried to Cameron Valdez is a running back that I think it brings a different element of speed. He's going to replace Roderick Thompson. They brought in Dre McCray from Austin Peay. There's some coaching connections there on Joey's staff that had coached Dre previously before they got here. He's a burner. And I think they knew we've got to get a vertical threat. We've got to get somebody that can get behind the defense. And Miles Price was also dinged up quite a bit last year, and he was kind of the gadget guy, if you will. So
right.
That's the next step is stretching the field and making teams pay and not having to go on 12 play drives and get a holding penalty or committing a turnover or whatever, and then it just bogs down. So, and they did try to make up for that by going for it on fourth down, like I think 52 times. I think is right. Yeah. So they were like, you know what, we can't stretch the field, but we're going to get, we got 4 downs to get these 10 yards, and we're going to use them. And they believed in analytics. And I know opposing coaches over there just, when you get the third down, you're like, well, this is just really second down. So that's what won them the Texas game, going for it on fourth down. And
right, they were 6 of 8 on fourth down against Texas. Yep, ridiculous.
Right. Yes.
So what is the current status? What is the current state of confidence in Tyler Shough? I went to Oregon. I watched him a lot in the COVID year when he started in 2020. Started out really well and then struggled near the end of bigger games. Transfers to Texas Tech. Has a good amount of success, obviously punctuated by the bowl game last season. Is he clearly the guy? Obviously Donovan Smith transfers. Behren Morton's still there. Where is the confidence in Tyler Shough in both personally taking the next step and being the reason why the Red Raiders take the next step on offense?
Yeah, Dan, I would tell you that I think Tyler will ultimately be the guy here. I think Behren is going to make it difficult on him. Behren's a very talented player with, different arm angles and just kind of unorthodox with the way he plays it. Tyler is very mature. He treats this like a pro. He's 23. The NFL folks that come through here feel like that he's got a chance to be picked next year. And again, the question with Tyler, to me, it's not ability or anything other than can he stay healthy? What is his availability? And because when he's been healthy, he's been really good here, and he was at Oregon. And it didn't end the way he wanted to at Oregon. I think it's fascinating to me that Oregon will play here in the non-conference this year.
Yeah.
I can't imagine in everybody's wildest dreams that this player and this program would think they would see each other on opposite ends of the spectrum whenever he transferred here. But he's up to about 235 now, and he's a legit 6'3", and I think he added some weight to try to be a little bit more durable. But I just think he goes about this, and he kind of runs that locker room right now. He's an alpha, and doesn't do it in a disrespectful way, but he's got some confidence to him. But I think if he stays healthy, I think he's the guy. But Behren won't make it easy on him at all. But as we know in this league and really in the sport in general, you're going to need both of these guys. That's just the way it works. There wasn't hardly anybody in the Big 12, I think, last year that just played with the same guy the entire season. Even Max Duggan, everybody forgets. Well, guess what? He didn't initially win that
Right, and
job.
start, yeah.
Chandler Morris got hurt. But I'm very impressed by Tyler, and I get the questions. Look, I don't believe in him. He can't stay healthy. That's fair, and that's what Tyler has to show the folks at the next level is that he can be durable. He can stay healthy and be available for his team. But if he is, boy, I'd sure like to see what a season looks like with him. But I think you've got a great 1-2, however the order shakes out.
You mentioned durability, of course, and you mentioned a so-so offensive line from last year. What is the state of the offensive line? Because that can go a long way to helping Tyler Shough stay healthy and upright. Do you expect them to be better? Do you expect them to evolve at all? Or is that quick passing game sort of a result of a lack of full confidence in the ability of the offensive line to stand in there?
One of my first conversations with Zach Kitley when he finally was around the team and everything, when he'd gotten on the job and he'd been here for a period of time, and Stephen Hamby, who played here when Mike Leach was here, he's the O-line coach. They both obviously came from Western Kentucky, and both of them kind of said something similar to, man, I think our O-line at Western Kentucky, that was protecting Bailey, was a bit better than this right here.
Wow.
And so I say that to say, well, guess who's now here? You've got two of those starters that are one, your starting center in Rusty Stotts, and then I think Cole Spencer will be your starting left guard. And those guys are seniors. They understand the scheme and the system. That allows you to move Dennis Wilburn, who was your starting center last year, to his more natural position at right guard. And so I think that they feel extremely comfortable with the interior three. They moved Caleb Rogers from left tackle to right and Monroe Mills from right tackle over to left. And Monroe was an Oklahoma State transfer here in the portal last year. I think that's not a problem. The problem may come into, okay, who's my 6th, 7th, 8th? That's an issue. Jacoby Jackson is their swing guard, and then Ty Buchanan came from USC. He was originally from Houston. He's going to be the swing tackle. So I think those 7 guys, I don't know if you have any draft picks in that group,
Right.
Possibly, but I think that it's much different than it was last year. It's older, it's more experienced. I think Rusty Stotts allows them to play much faster because he's used to the way they were running things at Western Kentucky. It's just, again, I'm sure every coach in the country would say this. Well, I wish we had more depth or more proven depth there. And that's kind of where Texas Tech is on that offensive line. But it is dramatically improved. And Joey will tell you, he told us all it was a problem last year. They went and got 4 or 5 portal guys to try to fix it. And now he's telling you how much better it is. And so I believe him because he was right last year, and I think he'll be right this year.
What is the situation on the trail? Obviously, bringing in a good class in year one goes a long way, and Tech hits the portal for some much needed defensive depth and help. What do you expect from Joey McGuire and this staff as recruiters, as obviously now Texas and Oklahoma ramp up for the SEC, a more attractive conference perhaps for in-state talent, that they're going to be able to stay closer to home as the conference itself grows with the addition of 4 high-quality programs? What is the state of Texas Tech recruiting?
This is going to be a smaller class. I think they're talking about maybe only 18 signees, give or take. And I think they're aiming really, really high. They have a big-time quarterback named Will Hammond that's already committed, 4 stars and all those things. I think that they are making some waves in the state because there's a young man by the name of Micah Hudson who probably has 30 to 35 scholarship offers, and he's kind of picking between Alabama and Ohio State and Texas A&M. But Tech may be his favorite right now. And I think he's been here multiple times in the spring. And so this is the next step here this is a first full cycle that I think they've had a chance to recruit kids when they were younger and then see some payoff. But because of the smaller class, they're able to give some attention and more attention to some guys. But I think that they will be disappointed if this is not another top 25 class, even though it may not be in numbers wise,
Right.
The quantity. They're going after quality here. Dylan Spencer was a young man that signed last year that was committed to Texas for much of the cycle and then switches at the last minute. Big time defensive edge guy that looks like, you would think, kind of looks like a young Tyree Wilson.
Wow.
You just don't get a ton of guys that look the part here, but Joey's starting to change that. And I think he realized they needed to get bigger, and you win games up front. So there's a lot of focus on the defensive line, offensive line, but some of the skill positions that the fans love are starting to be addressed here too. And again, it's about speed. He wants faster, he wants bigger, like everybody does. But we're starting to see some tangible results here.
Who do you expect from this incoming class, either an early enrollee or somebody who will come in over summer, who will be physically there and hopefully mentally there with his aptitude to at least see some rotation time this fall?
All the portal guys, Dre McCray, CJ
Sure.
Baskerville, Steve Linton, Rusty Stotts, all those guys will either start or factor in heavily. If you want to go to freshmen, I would say there's a handful of DBs that have a chance. Dylan Spencer is the one that I mentioned. He's more of an edge guy that I think, again, when you see him, you're like, man, you look like you're 25, 27 years old. But this is just the difference. And when you see what Alabama recruits and Ohio State recruits, they just get these guys like, where do you find these people? But there's some DBs that I think Jordan Sanford, Chapman Lewis, excuse me. But there's some young DBs that I think have a chance to. Mo Horn is a name that he redshirted last year, but I think he's kind of pushing to start or a top backup as a DB. But that's where they need some guys to step up. It's kind of in the secondary. The starters are really good and they're old. These are 4th and 5th year guys across the board. After that, though, you're gonna be somewhat young, and I think that's where the spring has been really good for these guys, and a lot of these mid-year guys coming in early and ability to kind of catch up and I think learn the system and maybe get a head start on things.
So now with the benefit of the quick first early signing day class, the hiring of the coaching staff, spring ball, summer, fall camp, first season, and now the first full signing class, the first full portal class, and now another spring. What grade do you give to Joey McGuire after that full encompassing amount of time heading into year 2?
I mean, I would say it's an A. Some may argue that it's not. It should be A+ because you have to forget. I mean, or remember where it was when he took it, and I just think the morale was really low. There's a lot of confusion about what direction you're going. Football had just been a problem here we're talking a decade, and this is a program that was just going to bowl games every year. Mike took him. Mike was winning 7 wins was a bad season under Mike. 8 or 9 wins, and then you just got away from that. And then it's like, there were stretches here where you go 2 or 3 years and there is no bowl game. And we know there's a lot of bowl games. You just have to be 500 or better.
Yeah.
And I think so an 8-win season and finally finishing a season playing better football than when you started was a breath of fresh air. But with what he's been able to do with, he's about to be in the green room at the draft with Tyree, with you winning bowl games and finishing the season on a 4-game winning streak, the road win and beating Texas and Oklahoma. I just think there's a lot of positivity here. And you were picked to finish 8th or 9th last season before the season started. I will be shocked if you're not picked in the top half of this league, even though there's a 14-team league. But I think there's a chance you could be ranked to start the season or just outside of that. And I think that's just worlds different than when he took this thing over.
It's kind of amazing that the conversation or the grade that you're giving to Joey McGuire.
I agree.
What I'm saying is if Bijan Robinson doesn't fumble, if Dylan Gabriel doesn't get hurt, right, and the Oklahoma overtime goes a different way and they finish the season 5-7, which again is not to criticize Texas Tech because winning is better than losing. Yes. Find the opportunities and take advantage of the opportunities. But it's probably a very different grade if they miss a bowl game in year 1, getting that close, putting themselves in position that many times and not coming through. Then we're having like a B+ conversation. But the ability to finish is everything.
Yeah, and maybe even a worse grade. But I agree with you. And there's for the last decade, it's like, man, if you just change those 4 or 5 plays. But this is the same conversation that we'd had if our quarterbacks could have been healthy. But people are sick of hearing that. And I think Joey was able to get tangible results. And he's also able to go, Yeah, we had some injuries. So what? We still won more than we lost, and we beat really good teams doing so. We figured out a way, and it wasn't pretty at times, but nobody cares. Do you want to win a game 3-0 or 56-53? I don't care. Just win, and that's what he was able to do more than he lost.
What's your viewpoint of the 2023 Big 12 and then 2024 Big 12, which are very different considering the roster of teams? Where does Texas Tech, not necessarily like where should they be in preseason, but where do you think they belong in terms of now a bigger conference, a conference that's more geographically spread out? Is the Red Raider place any different? We traditionally have looked at, and I'm speaking for myself, like Texas Tech is this competitive team that's a thorn in everybody's side. At absolute worst, they always seem to be, a thorn in Texas or Oklahoma's side. What with the new look Big 12 this year, new look Big 12 in 2024, what is the state of the brand of Texas Tech, I guess?
I think everybody. It's funny you mentioned the brand because that's Joey's big deal. He's all about the brand and the hardest working, most competitive team and the toughest team in the country. He says it on a daily basis. I think there's a lot of programs that are going to look at this league minus Oklahoma and Texas and say we should be the one that kind of emerges out of the dust here, and we have a chance to kind of run this thing or be in a position to be in the mix every year. I think Oklahoma State probably feels this way. Baylor and the TCU feel this way. I know Texas Tech feels this way. They've just been waiting for, to finally get this thing turned and put their best foot forward. I'm sure that the folks at Central Florida feel this way with all that they have done.
Sure.
And BYU's got to be licking their chops. Like we finally get to show everybody, what we're about. I think this year it's fascinating because the way the schedule works out, you don't play either school from Oklahoma. You're done playing Oklahoma, I think, permanently. I'm shocked that they didn't put Oklahoma State on your schedule because I think that's a natural geographic rival that will be kind of big in the new Big 12 going forward, but it's weird that you're not playing them this year. So it's weird that Central Florida is coming to Lubbock and you got to go to Provo. This is kind of fun.
It's
weird.
Odd, but fun. Yeah.
Yes. But I think some of that is going to be fascinating to see how ultimately it works out and tiebreakers and, well, they didn't play this team and all that as we get to the edge. But I really feel like that in this race, I think Kansas State is going to be a team that is going to have to be dealt with. I think they're really good. Will Howard really came on the scene last year, was really good. I think TCU is going to be still pretty good, even though they replace a ton. That'll depend on how good Chandler Morris ultimately is. I think Oklahoma expects to bounce back, and then Texas is going to be a problem depending on how good Quinn Ewers is or Arch Manning or whoever that they put up under center. And so, but I think Texas Tech fits in that group. They earn that right, I think, to be at least in the top half of the league discussion and potentially ranked in the top 25 based on how they finished and based on so many guys coming back. Tony Bradford and Jalen Hutchings are fifth-year defensive tackles that are really good players that turn down some opportunities to go to the next level to stay here and anchor that defensive line again. So your two starting corners are back. They're both fifth-year guys. On and on it goes. And so I like what they have. And again, does Tyler stay healthy? But I think they can make some noise this year. And Joey will tell you, we got a shot. And I think he knows he's got a team that's going to be a pain for everybody to deal with, just like you said.
Very fair, very fair. And the Big 12, probably the best TV show in America. Maybe not the best conference. It's the best TV show. It's throwing a bunch of feral bobcats into a phone booth and seeing who emerges, which is what I believe is the best of college football. So, Chris Level, Red Raider Sports, thank you so much for your time. Plug where you can be found on the internet and beyond.
Yeah, at redraidersports.com, at Chris Level on Twitter, and then Locked On Texas Tech Monday through Friday. And Dan, I appreciate you having me on. You were nice to include me. Thank you for covering the Red Raiders, and you crush it on your platform too. So the Solid Verbal, one of the best college football podcasts out there, man. So I appreciate you including me.
Of course, I'll take it. Chris, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, man. Talk to you next time.